Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacharya Ashotatara Shishimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Prem Skoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaurav Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Giri Govardhan ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki. Ganga Maya ki. Purna Maya ki. Devi ki. Devi ki. Harinam Sankirtan ki. Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki. Nitai Gora Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Tirtha Swami Nityanamane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shataprane Shri Guru Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Urvani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine. Would somebody like to read this translation? If you want, we can take turns. There's 5 of them. 5 verses.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can I read one?
Yes, please.
When will that opportune moment come to us when there will be shivering of the body as soon as we chant Lord Gauranga name while chanting Hare Krishna? When will there be tears in the eyes? Hare Krishna.
When will I obtain the mercy of Lord Nityananda? When by his mercy will the desire of material enjoyment become more significant?
Insignificant, yes. 3?
Insignificant. Sorry.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, can you make the font bigger?
Sure, sorry. There we go. Number 3?
Yeah.
When will the mind, when the mind is completely purified, being free from material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, and my spiritual life will be successful.
Thank you. The way this is, there we go. The way this is set up, it doesn't stack it. So I have to keep scrolling in order to make it big. Sorry about that. Number 4.
When shall I be very much eager to study the books left by 6 Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami? By their instruction, I shall be able to properly understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna.
Yeah. And the final one, number 5.
My only aspiration is to attend the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Narottam Das constantly prays to attend their lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Deva Jaya Govinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Deva Chandra Jaya Guru Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
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 Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Rama,
Rama Hare Rama Rama
Rama,
Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama Hare Rama Rama
Rama,
Rama Hare Hare.
Jai.
Hare.
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki Jai. Before we
Jai.
begin, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and the Guru Parampara, for giving us this as these Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Prabhupada translated this so that we could study it, understand it, and develop love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. We are on text 172, and this is the topic of the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay, great. Nrsimha Prabhu, would you like to?
Yes, Prabhu. ব্যাস ভ্রান্ত বলি সেই সূত্রে দোষ দিয়া বিবর্তবাদ স্থাপিয়াছে কল্পনা করিয়া.
Translation. Shankaracharya states that the theory of transformation presented in the Vedanta Sutra implies that the absolute truth itself is transformed. In this way, the Mayavadi philosophers denigrate Srila Vyasadeva by accusing him of error. They thus find fault in the Vedanta Sutra and misinterpret it to try to establish the theory of illusion. Purport. The first verse of the Brahma Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We must now inquire into the absolute truth. The second verse immediately answers Jamadi Ashayataha. The absolute truth is the original source of everything. Janmadi Asya Yataha does not suggest that the original person has been transformed. Rather, it clearly indicates that he produces this cosmic manifestation through his inconceivable energy. This is also clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita 10:8, where Krishna says, Mata sarvam pravartate. From me, everything emanates. This is also confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad 3:1:1, Yato va imani bhutani jayanti. The supreme absolute truth is that from which everything is born. Similarly, in the Mundaka Upanishad 1:1:7, it is stated, Yatorna nabi srijate grinati cha. The Lord creates and destroys this cosmic manifestation. As a spider creates a web and draws it back within itself. All these Shastric statements indicate that the transformation of the Lord's energy, not of the Lord himself. Let me repeat that. All these Shastric statements indicate the transformation of the Lord's energy, not of the Lord himself. Transformation of the Lord's energy is called Harinama Vada. However, being very anxious to protect Srila Vyasadeva from criticism, Shankaracharya became a pseudo-gentleman and put forward his theory of illusion, Vivartavada. Shankaracharya concocted the meaning of Parinamavada, and by word jugglery, he endeavored very hard to establish Parinamavada as Vivartavada. Just give me one moment. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So this is a philosophical conversation between Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the leading Pandit of Jagannath Puri. And he spoke to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu for 7 days about the meaning of Vedanta. And at the end, Sri Chaitanya, he didn't say anything. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, this is, you just listened this whole time. You didn't ask one question. Were you not listening? Did you not understand anything? He said, I was listening, but I didn't understand anything because I didn't understand the meanings by which you were interpreting the Vedanta from. And then Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to speak. And this is the portion where Lord Chaitanya is now enlightening Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And one of the points of contention is this Sankhya interpretation of the Vedas. More specifically, the interpretation of the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the absolute truth is manifest in actually 3 features. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavariti, Sabhyate. In that there is an aspect of the absolute truth that is all-pervading Brahman. And we can call this impersonal because it doesn't take the shape of a being in which one can actually have relationship with. But this is this Brahman, the energies of the Supreme Being, become manifest for the purpose, ultimately the purpose of service. Then there's the Paramatma, the localized aspect of the Supreme that is manifest as an expansion of the original person, Lord Sri Krishna. And that Paramatma manifests in the heart of every living being, of every soul. So in this way, the super soul carries or continues to travel with the individual soul as the supreme witness over all activities, the witness and guide. And then there is Bhagavan. And these understandings are considered to be perfect, more perfect, and then ultimately most perfect. I mean that everything comes back to the personality of Godhead. And from this personality, all other energies and manifestations, incarnations, incarnations, they come from that. So the question here specifically today is that this question of transformation, and the next verse will explain a little bit more. We'll speak a little bit about this, and then we'll go into the next verse. That this idea that the absolute truth itself is transformed. So transformed into what specifically? Spirit into matter. Can the absolute truth be transformed from spirit into matter? And the answer is no. That the absolute truth is not transformed. That the absolute truth actually remains untransformed, is in complete control of itself. It doesn't fall under Maya. It doesn't fall under the influence of any energy. And if this were the case, that means that energy would be superior then to the absolute truth. If we extract this out, we could say that, is there a force superior to the force of God or the force of Krishna? Is illusion so powerful? Is this energy and this illusion, this Maya? We have to understand that Krishna says, this is one of my energies. Daivihi yesha gunamayi mama maya dharatyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This divine energy of mine is very difficult to overcome, but one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it. So Krishna claims that he is in control of this illusory energy. So how is it that he can become transformed by it? How can he come under the control of it? The impersonalists, they're unable to see the difference between the Prakriti and the Purusha, the energy and the energetic, or the source of energy. And they combine it all as one. So when they see transformation in the energy of the Lord, so one of his Prakritis is the creative energy, this material energy. And this material energy goes through various transformations and changes. Then this can be observed. But that doesn't mean that the supreme absolute truth also undergoes these transformations or falls under the influence of this Maya. So Srila Prabhupada gives us various Shastric statements to understand this, and some technical terms like Parinamavata, transformation of the Lord's energy, and then the Virvrata Vada, which was presented by Sankaracharya, was his idea to try to explain the transformation of the Lord's energy. Any questions or comments? Please unmute yourself if you do. Hello? Just speak up a little bit. Anybody? Okay, we'll go into the next verse. And this is just a continuation. We'll hear more on this topic. Text number 173.
জীবের দেহে আত্মবুদ্ধি সেই মিথ্যা হয়, জগৎ যে মিথ্যা নহে, নশ্বর মাত্র হয়।
The theory of illusion can be applied only when the living entity identifies himself with the body. As far as the cosmic manifestation is concerned, it cannot be called false, although it is certainly temporary. Purport. The living entity is the eternal servant of Krishna. Being part and parcel of the Lord, he is constitutionally pure. But due to his contact with material energy, he identifies himself either with the gross or subtle material body. Such indication is certainly false and constitutes the genuine platform of the theory of illusion. The living entity is eternal. He can never be subjected to the limits of time, as are his gross and subtle bodies. The cosmic manifestation is never false, but it is subject to the change by the influence of the time factor. For a living entity to accept this cosmic manifestation as the field for his sense enjoyment is certainly illusory. This material world is a manifestation of the material energy of the Lord. This is explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. We can all chant this together. 7-4. Bhumir apo nalo vayo kamano buddhirevacha ahankara ityame bina praktir ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. The material world is the inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it is not a fact that the Supreme Lord has been transformed into this material world. The Mayavadi philosophers, devoid of true understanding, have confused the theory of illusion and the theory of the cosmic manifestation by word jugglery. The theory of illusion can be applied to a person who identifies himself with the body. The living entity is the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. And the material world is the inferior energy. Both, however, are prakriti, energy. Although the energies are simultaneously one with the Lord and different from him, the Lord never loses his personal form due to the transformation of his different energies. This is a very thorough purport that explains the subject matter very concisely. These 2 terms, false and illusory, come up in the topic of trying to explain this material world and our existence in this material world. And just so that we're fully understanding this, it's important for our own education as well as when we need to explain this to others, is that the living entity's identification as a material body, this is illusion. It's false. We think that we're something that we're not. So this can certainly be said, this identification is illusory or false. The material world, this prakriti, that is not false. That is actually something that exists that is true. However, it is temporary. And although it's the illusory energy of the Lord, that illusory energy has a particular purpose and a particular service. It's not that it is simply just misidentified with itself as a living entity, is misidentified as a material body. On Sunday, we were reading about the false ego, chapter 13, items of knowledge. And in that, Srila Prabhupada explains that the false ego is the misidentification of the living entity as a material body. And that material body consists of both the gross and subtle bodies of mind intelligence as well. And we identify not as a servant of Krishna, which is our real ego. We identify with something that is counterfeit or false. But this cosmic manifestation, as Srila Prabhupada says here, is never false. It is simply just change. It's simply just constantly changing due to the time factor. Now, that same changing does not take place for the superior energy of the Lord, this changing. The spirit soul does not change. It is simply misidentified in this material world. He sees the changes of this material world, so the living being thinks that he is changing. This is illusion. This is the false conception of self. So that point in and of that point is that point. Any questions or comments on that point? Okay. I can't always see everybody's hand, so if you do put your hand up, just unmute and you can just start talking. The next point here that is that the Mayavadi philosophers become confused. And this is a point I wanted us to understand, is that these subjects can become complicated. And in anything that is being complicated, we too are trying to understand really what is going on. We want to be able to use our brains as well as some intelligence, meaning this buddhi or capacity to discriminate, to try to understand how everything is interconnected. How is it that God enters into this cosmic manifestation? How does this cosmic manifestation operate? These changes that we see, this time factor that is undergoing, trying to create answers, even in the explanations that are given in the Vedas. And as you go back further into the original Vedas, into the Upanishads, the way that they are written, without having proper guidance to explain and teach these, under the direction of a spiritual master who is connected, it could be very easily that a person gets confused. The challenge is if we accept our intellect, which we have to admit is limited, just as our senses are limited, our minds are also limited. But when we accept them as kind of our final judgment, we become bewildered and we fall under illusion. So there are defects that come with this material body. Becoming illusioned is one of them. Imperfect senses is another one. Having the cheating capacity to claim you know something when really you don't, and you put forth various types of theories. Because after all, we're all trying to figure it out. And then from that, we also make mistakes. We err in judgment. So this is the fault in trying to understand the absolute truth from the inductive reasoning process. Yes, we have to use and confirm things. And we use the facilities of our minds and intellect to do so. But when we think that this is the final word, we will always come up short and come up with some level of concoction. And that's what is happening, is trying to understand the Vedas, which are very complicated, by using one's own intellect and not being guided by the deductive process coming down in disciplic succession in the Guru Parampara. So an example of this, something that we were having a class and this topic came up and we were using this microphone. There's a wireless microphone, and to take the batteries out, you have to know how to do it. And one of the people in the class, they were helping out. They were taking the batteries out to recharge them, and they just couldn't figure it out. They were in there for about 10 minutes trying to figure out how to take the batteries out. And they were getting to the point where they were actually going to do something destructive, to try to open up the flap because they thought the flap was stuck. So they tried to figure it out by looking at it, turning it around, banging it on the table, trying various ways that you could possibly do it. And then I walked into the room and asked him, "What are you doing?" He says, "This thing is broken. And I have to figure out how to fix it." And all I did was very lightly tap on the one side, which released the flap, and it was open. Now, this is a very simplified explanation of these two different processes of trying to understand knowledge. We could go on forever trying to figure things out and maybe never figure them out in full. But if somebody who's read the instruction manual and they understand this is how this piece of equipment, this is how this mechanism works, then they can easily just do it within no time. And that's what happened to me. I had read the instruction manual. In the instruction manual, all you got to do is hit the side of the flap, it opens up. So in the same way, we have to be very careful as we study spiritual knowledge, that we understand first and foremost through the purports and direction given by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is connected to Krishna, and therefore is connected to the Guru Parampara. And he's giving this knowledge after realizing it himself. Tadvidi paripratena pariprakshena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. When we try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from them submissively. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have first seen the truth. They can say, "Here is Krishna, this is Krishna," because they have seen Krishna. How can we be assured that they have seen Krishna? Well, because their consistency of behavior, etiquette, lifestyle of devotional service, as well as the consistency of message with the Shastras, of which they are explaining, as well as with all the great saints that have come before. Srila Prabhupada would say of us, of the Westerners, he would say, the American disease which we could probably now say is a international disease, is that we're always trying to change something. We're always trying to put our mark on it. We're always trying to say, I've done it better, or this is my theory. There's one explanation of being a Muni means that you have to develop your own theory. And if you don't have your own theory, then you're not a Muni. So that is also part of our conditioning here in this material world, is that we want to be separate. We don't want to be connected to Krishna as Das, Anudas. We want to be separate. We want to create our own identity. And that, of course, is false ego. So we need to be careful here, so that we don't fall under these tendencies, these Mayavadi tendencies, which will hamper us in developing our love for Krishna. Anything anybody would like to say on this or ask any questions before we move on? No? All right. I know it's kind of philosophical. All right, let us continue.
It's very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good explanation.
প্রণব যে মহাবাক্য ঈশ্বরের মূর্তি প্রণব হইতে সর্ববেদ জগৎ উৎপত্তি
The transcendental vibration, Omkara, is the sound form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All Vedic knowledge and this cosmic manifestation are produced from the sound representation of the Supreme Lord. Purport. Omkara is the representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in sound. This form of his holy name is accepted as the transcendental vibration, Mahavakya, by virtue of which the temporary material manifestation has come into being. If one takes shelter of the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Omkara, he can realize his constitutional identity and engage in devotional service, even though in conditioned life. I'll repeat that. If one takes shelter of the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Omkara, he can realize his constitutional identity and engage in devotional service, even though in conditioned life. So this is something very familiar to us, this form of the Supreme Lord of sound. And we know it more familiarly with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, in which we chant all the time. Ourselves in the form of japa are coming together in the form of kirtan, sankirtan. So there's an emphasis here given on Omkara. So I wanted to just pull up real quickly some references of this in the Bhagavad Gita. We find in the 7th chapter, where Krishna says, "O son of Kunti, I am the taste and water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, and I am the sound and ether and the ability within man." So here Krishna says, I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. And many of the Vedic mantras, they all begin with with Om, which represents Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, he says this here. He says, Pranava, or the Omkara transcendental sound, in the beginning of every Vedic hymn, addresses the Supreme Lord. Because the impersonalists are very much afraid of addressing the Supreme Lord Krishna by his innumerable names, they prefer to vibrate the transcendental sound Omkara. But they do not realize that Omkara is the sound representation of Krishna. The jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness extends everywhere, and one who knows Krishna is blessed. So, why is this impersonal way of addressing the Supreme? Because it really doesn't. It speaks to. It doesn't. Well, let me say what it doesn't do. It doesn't speak to the personality of Godhead. It doesn't. It doesn't speak to the qualities, the form, the name, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Impersonalists may believe that by saying Krishna, you're limiting yourselves to just Krishna. But that is due to their misunderstanding that there is anything else but Krishna. In fact, the idea is that actually nothing exists beyond Krishna, because everything is contained within Krishna. All of Krishna's energies, all the material existence, which is part of Krishna's energies, the living beings, all the energies that we read about in the Vedic scriptures, they are all manifestations of Krishna. So in one sense, you can say there is nothing but Krishna that exists, even though there is variety that exists everywhere. This variety is the various energies of Krishna. And we understand the relationship of Krishna and his energies as Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneously one, but also there's variety, there's some difference. They are all contained within Krishna. They are all of Krishna's nature. In other words, you can't escape Krishna. Krishna can only put you under the illusion that you have escaped him. So, Vaishnavas, we're taught to address Krishna directly with his personal names. In fact, if you want to have a relationship with somebody, you address them by their name. If you just kind of keep things in very general terms, then sometimes we're unable to actually, it's a lot of times a reflection of how close you are to the person. Like a person may say, "How is Mary?" If Mary is your wife, you say, "Mary's doing good." You know that person knows that person's name. But if a person says, "How is your wife?" Well, wife can be applied to anybody. Anybody who has a wife. But how is Mary? Mary is very specific. So impersonalists, they use this name Omkara. It's a very generic and impersonal way of addressing the Supreme Being. And therefore, we're not really encouraged to do that when addressing the Supreme Lord. However, we should know that Om is the sound representation of the Supreme Being. Now let's go into the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Text number 24 says, "Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performance of sacrifice, charity, and penance, in accordance with scriptural regulations, begin always with Om, to attain the Supreme. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. And then, of course, sat comes after that. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional sacrifice, and is indicated by the word sat. So here again we hear, so there are mantras that we chant, Om Agyannatim Brahmdasha, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya. So this is giving, recognizing the supremacy of Krishna and the sacredness of the mantra. We should not take any, use it in any derogatory way. There's nothing inauspicious about Om. In fact, it is the most auspicious because it represents Krishna. But the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra directly addresses Krishna as a supreme person, and has the power then to awaken our relationship with Krishna. Not just address Krishna in a very generic and impersonal way. And we do this for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, as well as to reestablish the dormant love of God that is with us, is within us. We also understand through the explanation by Srila Prabhupada that this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is a prayer requesting to be engaged in the service of the Lord, which again is very personal. O all attractive Lord, O energy of the Lord, O reservoir of all pleasure, please engage me in your service. This represents a relationship. With Omkara, you don't get this level of interaction, relationship. There is no connection through service. Okay. It's 8:47. I'll stop here. Let's see if there's any questions, comments, or reflections on this particular verse or anything that we spoke about today. Yeah, I know it's kind of philosophical, but it's important that we understand some of these points.
Dronacarya, thank you so much. If you can kindly bit summarize in relationship to whole narration, today's verses. Can you please connect the dots?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So start off with the Supreme Lord does not undergo absolute truth, does not undergo transformation. This material manifestation, which is one of the energies of the Lord, that undergoes through different transformations due to the time factor, the inferior energy. The superior energy, which consists of the living beings, the souls of this world, they are not going under this transformation. They're simply under illusion that we think that we're undergoing a transformation. This is called Maya, or illusion. But this illusion does not actually influence Krishna. In fact, this illusion is actually an energy of Krishna. When the living being understands that this illusion is actually an energy of Krishna, we can then utilize this material energy in the service of Krishna, which is its original intent. And that which binds us can actually then liberate us. This idea of false and temporary has come up. So the material manifestation is not false, just as our identification with this material world, that is considered to be false. But this material manifestation is considered to be temporary, undergoing various changes due to time. And then we talked about to resist the tendency to try to speculate. And this is where a lot of these word juggleries, concoctions that Lord Caitanya is talking about to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has come about, trying to understand Krishna through our imperfect senses, creating various theories, creating, and thus by doing so, falling under illusion. So there's the process of knowledge that comes through parampara, through the Vedas, through the realized teachers, the spiritual masters. And this is how we should understand things as the final word. Yes, we have to be able to discriminate with our minds and intelligence, but we can't use that as our final word, or else we will continue to become baffled, and then thus come up with various theories. This will only derail us from spiritual life. And then finally, Omkara is the transcendental sound vibration of the Lord. And then actually all the cosmic manifestations have actually started from sound. We read about this recently in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But the sound representation of the Lord, although Omkara does represent that, we prefer Hare Krishna because it directly addresses the personal qualities and a relationship with Krishna. So most of the time you'll find impersonalists chanting Om, where we're instructed to always be seeking out service, and trying to reestablish our lost relationship. Om is preferred by the impersonalists because they feel it limits Krishna. It's not a limiting name, where Krishna is a limiting name. But this is only due to their misunderstanding that anything exists outside of Krishna, and there's no limits to Krishna. Is that
Yes.
Is that summary okay?
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything anybody else would like to share before we conclude today? Thank you very much for your attention. Let us all go into the world with positivity and Krishna consciousness. And when the opportunities come about, please share some of the things that you've learned and realized to help the world. Thank you all. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Caritamrita ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyaśa kripasimdhubhyevacha patinam pavanebhyo
Thank you.
Hare Krishna devotees. We'll be starting next time on 175.
Okay.